Okay. All right, so we've got, 13 screens up. Let me turn this over here so I can look at my notes and get everybody together. All right, let's begin. Hey, I want to begin by mentioning something that I talked about this morning at our Bible study, our book study, is that we had our first online new member class last Thursday. We haven't had a new member class in 9 months. And typically, we've got a class like every 2 months. Let me close the door.
You need to get that one? She got it.
Yeah.
She's got it.
So typically, we have a class every 2 months, but this time it's been 9 months. And we had, I think, a great turnout. We had about 28 people coming through this new member class. And, on a usual in-person one, it's like 3 hours long. We have lunch, we do a little introduction, I do Lutheran history and Reformation history. They're done by 3 o'clock. But, you can't go that long on Zoom.
Yeah.
So I budgeted an hour and a half. And of that hour and a half, I budgeted in my mind a half hour for introductions. Well, they took an hour and 10 minutes. I don't know if people were just fascinated with themselves or they hadn't talked to people for a long time, but it's really not that long. You think 28 people, if it's 3 minutes each, which isn't that long.
Yeah.
It adds up really quick. I just didn't time right. So I didn't have any time to do the Reformation. So that's what I'm doing back here when some of you came in. I'm doing a video. So we'll have those online, and then we're gonna have like 5 different videos that you can take a look at your leisure. I just did a tour of the campus here. Teddy's doing a tour of Concord. Matt's doing a tour of South. Lori's going to be doing a tour of Realm, how to use that, and I'm just finishing up the Reformation history little thing too. So it's a new way, but here's the cool thing. 3 of the people that are joining out at 28, 3 of them don't even live in Charlotte.
Cool.
1 lives in Lumberton, North Carolina, and 2, it's a couple, live in St. Louis, Missouri.
Wow.
So no longer is church membership tied to a geographical region. You can choose a church really anywhere. And so, we're feeling, ahead of the curve in putting together Christ Online, like about a month before COVID hit. So these are going to be people that's going to be their real, authentic worship experience. It's going to be online. It's kind of cool, huh?
Scott, are you going to offer those videos to the rest of the congregation who might never have gone to Concord or might never have gone to South?
So we'll have those on our resource page of our website. Cool. So people can do that. Good. All right. Let's take a look at Zechariah. We'll see how far we get and if we can actually get into Joel. Now, Joel was only like 2 pages, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So if we don't get into Joel, we'll give it to Drew next week to figure that thing out. Quick little review. Zechariah, we know the dating of Zechariah because he's very specific. He talks about during the king Darius and this month and that year and all that stuff. So we know that. We know that he is a contemporary of Haggai. So we know what's going on, that the people have now, the 50,000 have come back down from Babylonia. They started the temple. They had a really good start. And then, as what happens often, life gets in the way. Their crops need tending to, their own house needs to be put up, that paneling needs to be assembled. And so it's not that they're bad people, but they just have gotten, got to admit there we go. There, one more person asked to get on. So, so they're not bad people, they just have taken their focus off there. And remember, we have two leaders. Zerubbabel as the kind of the king, or the governor, they called him, the governor. And then the priest is
Josiah.
Josiah. Oh, Joshua or Josiah?
Joshua.
Joshua. Yeah, you threw me off there. Joshua.
He
All right.
just keep doing this.
Now boy, you helped me for the Sunday service as I talked about return to me and I will return to you. Able to draw up that Jesus knocking on the door and waiting. All right, so return. So that's where we were. There are 9 visions of Zechariah. Now, visions themselves are very difficult to interpret. It's like interpreting dreams. So they're hard to begin with, number one. Number two, they're hard to interpret for that particular historical situation. And then number three, even more difficult to interpret, what does this mean for us today? That's always been the struggle of some biblical studies of eschatological material. You know, we remember back in the 70s and 80s when people were reading Revelation. And they were saying, you see, this bear, it means Russia. This dragon, it means China. This other nation is North Korea, and they're going to have a war, and we're the United States here. It's all laid out in the book of Revelation. Well, it's very offensive to think that Revelation has nothing to say for 2,000 years until you and I got on this planet. And suddenly it's written just for us. It's had nothing to say for those 2,000 years. It's very egocentric to believe that. So anyways, interpretations are hard for visions. And so we're getting into some of these visions. So last week we had the 4 horsemen and the different colors and the myrtle trees, I think they were called, or are they myrtle? Mm-hmm. Myrtle trees. Had the 4 horns and the 4 craftsmen, the man with the measuring rod. And so as we begin here today, page 456, we come up with yet another one of those. Let's start with 455. Do you remember A Christmas Carol with Scrooge? And it was a Christmas story, Christmas Carol.
It's Christmas.
Yeah. Remember those scenes in which the angel comes, goes to Christmas past and present and future, and taking George C. Scott, the oldest version of this one, and always asking the question, what do you see? What do you see? Taking him to various places, what do you see? It's almost reminiscent of that kind of interplay between Scrooge and the angel, or the ghost, and here's Zechariah and the angel. Bottom of page 455. Then the angels who talked with me returned and woke me up, like someone awakened from sleep. He said, what do you see? What do you see? I answered, I see a solid gold lampstand with a bowl at the top and 7 lamps on it. Now, what other lampstand has 7 candles in it? Menorah. Probably reminiscent of that beautiful menorah that was in the Solomon's temple that they would have, at least if they had not seen, they certainly would have heard about, and they probably had replicas of up in Babylonia. And maybe as they built this new temple halfway, they might have. So this is what I'm saying is a very common, image. Solid gold lampstands with a bowl at the top and 7 lamps on it with 7 channels to the lamps. 7 channels to the lamps. Anybody got any idea what that means so far? Channels?
Keep the oil fed into it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking here, Houston, is that now we've got this menorah. We got the 7 candles. And it's not like our altar guild who have to every Sunday check the oil of the candles to make sure. No, this one has a big bowl on top, and there's a conduit, a channel that's going to each lamp. So in other words, it's never running out. It's never running out. Also, there are 2 olive trees by it, one on the right of the bowl and one on the left. When is light used in the Bible? Think about the very beginning.
Let there be light.
Let there be light. In this era of pre-electricity, light was such a great gift to ward off the darkness and the beasts and things that go bump in the night. We think about light for the Exodus is the image of God, a pillar of fire by night, pillar of cloud by day. Think about the Shekinah is the light of God. And I suppose that if this menorah was in the temple, it's really an image of the presence of God that never goes out because it has this bowl. And the olive trees, oftentimes Israel is referred to as, olive or even wine branches. All right, again, the ghost of Christmas past says, what are these, Lord? Oh, no, he says, Zechariah says, what are these, Lord? He says, do you not know what these are? Ooh, now we have an oral exam. No, my Lord. This is the word of the Lord to Zerubbabel, not by might nor power, but by my spirit, says the Lord Almighty. So as you're coming back from Babylonia and you now have taken a little time off because you're feeling a little secure, you've got some of it's done, and the crops are going well. There's a reminder, not by might or power, but by the Spirit. What are you, mighty mountains? Before Zerubbabel, you will become level ground. Then he will bring out the capstone to shout out, God bless it, God bless it. When my dad said, God bless it, it wasn't a good thing, was it? So what God is saying here, he's really encouraging. These are words of encouragement to Zerubbabel, that the mountains will be made low, as Isaiah says. And you're going to have this celebration. Then the word of the Lord came to me, the hand of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this temple. His hands will also complete it. Then you will know that the Lord Almighty has sent me to you. Good gift. Encouragement. Do it. Complete it. Who dares despise the day of small things? Since the 7 eyes of the Lord that reigns throughout the earth will rejoice when they have seen the chosen capstone in the hand of Zerubbabel. All right, who's got that answer? What's the 7 eyes of the Lord? Or is that just talking about God has eyes everywhere?
Yeah, some omniscient.
It's like my mother here, the eyes at the back of her head. Maybe it's just omniscience of God. Then I asked the angel, what are these 2 olive trees on the right and left of the lampstand? And I asked him, what are these 2 olive branches beside the 2 gold pipes that pour out a golden oil? Golden oil. Do you know what these are? No. So he said, these are the two who are anointed to serve the Lord of all the earth. And who are these two? Zerubbabel and Joshua. So this whole vision is the encouragement that we got the right people at the right place to complete the project that God has. All right? So it's a good words of, still a lot of work. It's going to take 4 years to complete this building project. But they're being certainly encouraged by the Lord.
That's a quick question.
But now, and look at that line. These are the two who are anointed to serve the Lord of all the earth. So it's not just for Jerusalem, not just for the Jews. This goes back to that Abrahamic covenant, blessed to be a blessing for the rest of the world. Yeah. Now the curse, the flying scroll. He said to me, this is the curse that is going out over the whole land, for according to what it says on one side, every thief will be banished. And according to what it says on the other, everyone who swears falsely will be banished. The Lord declares, I will send out and I will enter the house of the thief and the house of anyone who swears falsely by my name. It will remain in that house and destroy completely both timber and stones. All right, so this next one is a curse. Is it just thieves? Maybe not. I mean, it might be kind of a catch-all for all people doing bad things. Is it just lying? Maybe not. It could be all the improper use of our words. But here it is that there's going to be no place, that's what it's saying, there's going to be no place in this prosperity, no place in this rebuilding for thievery and for lying. No place. But what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with this evilness? Then we get to the woman in the basket. It's kind of a strange vision, I thought. Then the angel who was speaking to me came forward and says, look up and see what's happening. What is it? A basket. This is the iniquity of the people throughout the land. Then the cover of lead was raised, and there in the basket sat a woman. This is wickedness. Oh, no, come on. Why do we embody wickedness as that woman? Almost kind of harkens back to the Garden of Eden. That woman is the one who tempted me, and I ate. There's no need for that. Anyways, they've got evil embodied. All the thievery and all the slander, all the lying is now embodied in this woman. And they push her back into the basket, put the lead cover over into it. And then I looked up, and there before me were two women with the wind in their wings. They had wings like those of a stork and lifted up the basket between heaven and earth. Where are they taking the basket? Where are they going to take the basket?
North.
Back up north to what country?
Babylonia.
Back to Babylonia. Now, Babylonia, like Assyria, was kind of synonymous with the evil empire. I mean, it's the evil empire. So it only makes sense that not only are we going to say thievery and slander has no part here, but we're going to actually purge the country. We're going to put it back into a country that is the embodiment of sin. So let me ask you this. Is this a hearkening back to the time of the Babylonian exile in which the people of God were being punished, shackled up and took up to Babylonia, number one. Number two, is this about present time, Zechariah present time? And that as they build this, there's not going to be any more thievery and any more slander or lying. Doesn't seem likely, does it? That doesn't seem likely. Or is it futuristic still? That there will come a time, like the book of Revelation says, in which this ultimately will be purged and will come full circle into that shalom of the Garden of Eden. It's hard to tell what he means by that.
Could it be 1 and 3 combined? I mean, it's something for the present time.
Yeah.
And your first comment, and then maybe number 3 also has future meaning as well.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point, Dave. It could be all 3. It could be referring back, this is what God has always done. Like he did in Assyria, and like he did in Babylonia. He purges the nation of sin by just taking it away. And reminding the people, as we live out this new life here, it's going to be different. We're going to look and taste and smell and act differently. And then it will come to full completion later on. Other thoughts? All right. In the next page, 457. Then I looked up, and there before me were 4 chariots coming out from between 2 mountains, mountains of bronze. First chariot had a red horse, the second a black horse, the third a white, and the fourth dappled. All of them powerful. I asked the Lord, who was speaking to me, what are these, my Lord? The angel said, these are the 4 spirits of heaven going out from standing in the presence of the Lord of the whole world. The one with the black horse is going towards the north, and the white's going to the west, dappled going to the south.
None to the east.
Who's going east?
Should have been red.
I can see not going west, because west you hit the Mediterranean. Not east, I don't know.
He doesn't say where the red was.
I don't know. But the whole idea is not only are they taking the sin embodied in this woman in the basket, take it up north, but now it's just scattered throughout the whole world. And really, it's about banishment. It's about banishment. So then, interesting, take a look at this next one. Now, see how far we want to read into this. The word of the Lord came to me, take silver and gold from the exiles, Heldai, Tophijah, Jedi, who have arrived from Babylon. Go into the same house of the Lord as Josiah, son of Zephaniah. Take the silver, gold, make a crown, sit on the head of the high priest Joshua. Tell him, this is what the Lord Almighty says. Here is the man whose name is the branch. He will branch out from his place and build a temple of the Lord. It is he who will build the temple of the Lord and be clothed in majesty, sit in the rule. What? And will sit and rule on his throne. And he will be a priest on the throne. He'll be a priest on the throne. No, up to this point, there has been a very definite line. There is a line of kings, and there's a line of high priests, and never the twain shall meet. But here they're saying Joshua will be given the crown. And this priest, what does it say? Will sit and rule on his throne. Now there'll be harmony between the two. I guess the two being the high priest and the king. The church of state. Now I don't know how far to read into this. But there was that messianic prophecy. A priest like Melchizedek. From Hebrews also, the book of Hebrews picks it up. The priest like Melchizedek, who's also was a king. He was a king and a priest. And then that same thing applies then to Jesus, who is also the King of Kings but is also the high priest. And so this might be a messianic prophecy that there'll come that day in which the high priest and the king, that one position, or those two positions, will become one. And that one who's able to fulfill both roles will be able to wear the crown that will sit and rule, and there'll be harmony. There could be something going on there with the messianic prophecy. Well, then we go on. In the 4th year of King Darius, the word of the Lord came to Zechariah in the 4th day, the 9th month, the month. That's very specific, isn't it? What were you doing, April 12th, 2001? Very specific. The people of Bethel said so-and-so. They asked the priest of the house of the Lord, should I mourn and fast in the 5th month as I have done for so many years? What's this about?
After the temple was destroyed, there was mourning. When the city was destroyed, the walls, then the temple, and then when they went off into exile, there were various months in which they commemorated those disasters by mourning. And they began to wonder whether they should keep doing that now that they were back.
That's it. Now, I think that there was only one day of fasting prior to this that the Old Testament had. And it might have been the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, but I'm not sure about that. But I do know that fasting, even though it happened periodically, it wasn't like a national fast, except for like 1 or 2. But in the exile, as Houston said, absolutely right, they decided to commemorate, to remember when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the walls, a day of mourning. So the day begins of fasting. So they're wondering, now that we're back, I mean, we've been doing this for 70 years. It's kind of on my calendar. It pops up. Should I continue this whole thing? Let's find out. Then the word of the Lord came to me, ask all the people of the land and the priest, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th months for the past 70 years, was it really for me that you fasted? And when you were eating and drinking, were you not just feasting for yourself? Are these not the words of the Lord proclaimed through the early prophets when Jerusalem and surrounding towns were at rest and prosperity? All right. How many times have we come now? This is not a rhetorical question. How many times, or better yet, give me some examples from the prophets that we've gone through. Oops, I did not see that. Sorry. People were waiting in the waiting room. Give me some examples of prophets saying, stop going through the motions. I don't care about your sacrifices. I don't care how much money you put in. I don't care how many times you've been to worship. Stop going through the motions. I want to return to me with a full and complete heart. Now, give me some examples you remember of those.
Wasn't it almost every one of them?
Yes.
See, it was a trick question.
Yes.
Yes. Well, yes, it came up a lot.
Yeah.
But you think about Micah, perhaps the most famous one. What does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, act with kindness, and walk humbly with your God.
And love mercy.
Love, that was one. Yeah, love, mercy, absolutely. So that was also a Amos. Amos talked about stop going through the motions. It's about helping the poor. And what was the one about your women lounge in beds of gold, and it's all about the heart. And now we see the prophet saying the same thing. Were you doing it for me or for yourself? So then in this next paragraph, it's getting back to almost what Micah said. And the word of the Lord came again to Zechariah. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Administer true justice, show mercy, and compassion to one another. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless, the foreigner or the poor. Do not plot evil against each other. Pretty basic, huh? Pretty basic. I can't imagine anybody hearing that and saying, what? You want me to do what? Wait, I gotta write that one down. Because it's pretty basic. And it's amazing to me that, all these prophets, they're always just getting back down to the basic teachings of being a decent person, loving God with all your heart, having God as your primary focus. All right? So he reiterates it one more time, and the people said, sure, we'll do it. No, next line. But they refused to pay attention. Stubbornly, they turned their backs and covered their ears. They made their hearts as hard as flint and would not listen to the law or the words the Lord Almighty has said. So the Lord Almighty was very angry. They don't learn, do they? They don't learn. I've always got Sunday morning in my mind. Let me share with you a conversation I'm going to share on Sunday. A while back, I met this guy at a party, kind of a friend of a friend. I didn't know him. But he loved Jesus. I mean, he was deeply committed, and he was very strong. And when he found out that I was a pastor, man, we had the topic lined up for the rest of the night. And so he told me that, he was a Bible-believing, inerrancy, arm-raising, adult baptism, non-denominational, born again, all the adjectives you want to add to it. So then he asks me about, what church, and I tell him, and he's completely unfamiliar with Lutherans. Isn't that Catholic? I said, no, that's not. Talk a little bit about it, and about the importance of communion and baptism, most of the time with infants, but not always, the word. So it says, so you sprinkle kids. That's not a compliment, right? That's not a compliment. So then he says, how big is your church? And I said, well, that's about 3,000 members. The next question is, how many of those do you suppose are real Christians? There is a
What'd you answer, Scott?
I said, I'm hoping a couple. Because there gets to be this ranking system that he doesn't get to define the criteria. But I guess my thought was this: the people of God didn't learn their lesson. It's not as if from this point on they finally got it. This has been how many years? How many thousands of years? It goes back to Genesis with Adam and Eve eating that piece of fruit. It's as if he's thinking, all right, are you finally beyond sinning? Are you finally done with that silliness, that nonsense that you used to do back then before you were a Christian? And I would like to say, I wish it were as simple as that. But my reading of Scripture shows that the people of God have never gotten it. And there is this constant, I call it living in the gap. There's that gap of the ideal, the perfect, when the lion lies down with the lamb, when they shall sin no more. What was that line that from Jeremiah that we read about the new covenant? See if I can remember. Jeremiah 31, it says, And we will write it on the hearts of all people, and no one will have to tell one another, do this or don't do that, because everybody will just know. They will just know. I do long for that day. It suggests we've come to a point that we're done with that silly notion of sinning. I don't read it biblically, and I don't see it experientially. The Lord was very angry. And when I called, they did not listen. So when they called, I would not listen, says the Lord. I scattered them with the whirlwind. This is about the exile, right? I scattered them. The word of the Lord came to me. This is what the Lord said. I am very jealous for Zion. I am burning with jealousy for her. All right, now help me get a good definition of jealousy, because when we use the word jealous today, it's not something that we long to become, or we try to copy. It's not a characteristic that looks good on anybody. And yet God calls himself a jealous God. So what is it about the jealousy of God that's different from this high school boy that gets jealous when somebody else looks at my girlfriend?
It's not about him, it's about the people. It's not coming from a place of selfishness for him, it's coming from a place of love.
Good deal. Yeah, Kathy is saying the jealousy, the human jealousy, is coming from a very selfish, all about me, whereas the jealousy of God is about the love and care for God's people. How else would you say it?
I would say, to me, it is about marriage, and because you want somebody to, you would be jealous if you married and they started to love someone else. God, I mean, it's about loving God, and if you're going to love another God, that's not going to work. Just like if you're not going to love another person, if you're married, it's not going to work. So he wants it to work. He wants us to love him and not another God, because we're not going to be happy if we love whatever we love, money, people, whatever. We have to just love him first, or it's not, our life is not going to work. And he wants our life to work.
It's his full affection. He's not looking for anyone else. I mean, speaking to these people, and there is that special covenant with Zion, with the people who were his own. And I think he's reminding them of that as well. You are my people, and I love you jealously. I don't care for anything else. I want you to know I really do love you.
It really comes back to that first commandment, right? I'm the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. And this is the text on the 2/3 down on page 458 that we used on Sunday. This is what the Lord says: I will return to Zion and dwell in Jerusalem. Then Jerusalem will be called the faithful city, and the mountain of the Lord Almighty will be called the holy mountain. I love this. This is what the Lord Almighty says. Once again, men and women of ripe old age will sit in the streets of Jerusalem, each of them with cane in hand because of their age. You know, when we visited Jerusalem a couple of years ago, and it's not just Jerusalem, but a lot of these old cities, it is just delightful to see in the parks and the outside homes, older people just hanging out, and they're being together, and they're talking, and they're very active, walking up and down, and because there is that safety, and there's that peace and relaxation too, and that's what he's saying here. And then the kids bustling around, always a joy to see that. This is what the Lord Almighty says. It may seem marvelous to the remnant of the people, but it may seem, is it marvelous to me? This is what the Lord says. I will save my people from their country, east and west. And that's what we talked about on Sunday. Just wait. Just wait. It's an active waiting that we have during the building of the temple, but also during Advent as well. Now here is, I read something here. In preparation from Gallup poll. And I suppose this goes to that conversation with that guy at the party and how many of people are really Christians. I mean, I get what he's talking about. Gallup will say things like, 90-some% of people will say they believe in God. 75% in America will say that, I think it's actually 80 will say that they're Christian. They have to check a box that will say Christian. It would lead you to believe from that that the United States is the most Christian nation in the world. Then they have a follow-up question. How often did you go to church? And suddenly it goes down to less than 50%. It's more like 40, 30%. Then they ask the question, well, how many of you can actually recite the 10 Commandments? And then it went down to like 15, 10%. How many of you have a strong understanding of the Bible? Whoa. Then we're down even further. And maybe that's what that guy at the party was getting at. There's got to be some concrete connection between what box you check on the survey and how you choose to live your life. Let me read something to you. Page 186 in my book here. All right. So, Gallup goes on to talk about, I don't know if they're trying to figure out who's a real Christian, who's not a real Christian, but here's what they say. That those who check the box that says that they are satisfied in their life, are they satisfied in their life? 68% of those who are also highly spiritual check they are satisfied in their life, as opposed to 30% who are not spiritual say they're content with their life. So it's almost double, are content with their life if they're spiritual. Second one, their families are stronger, those who are spiritual. The divorce rate is lower. They tend to be more tolerant of other people, of other races. They're far more involved with charitable activities. 46% of all highly spiritual people are involved with charitable things. And 22%, again, half. So there is a correlation here. I don't want to dismiss that altogether. There is a correlation going on.
Scott, this is Catherine.
Got it. There it is.
To your point about those that are more spiritual are more satisfied with their life. And when I find myself not content and not satisfied with my life, I remember that this isn't my home. I mean, you don't want to get too comfortable here because you have another home. And I go back and forth and try to figure out, I'd say if I wasn't content with my life and happy here, that for what God's given me, I'd be sinning. I wasn't appreciating it. But then again, I go, this isn't my home. And that's a dichotomy there.
Right.
That's the right word.
Yeah, Jesus saying, I go to prepare a place for you. My Father's house is a mansion. This is your home. Yeah. Good deal. So in this active waiting, page 459, it talks about that day will come. Just wait. The seed will grow well. The vine will yield its fruit. The ground will produce its crop. The heaven will drop their dew. I will give all these things as an inheritance to the remnant of these people, just as you, Judah, and Israel have been a curse among the nations. So I will save you, and you'll be a blessing. Do not be afraid. Put your hands. All right? So jump down a little bit, halfway there. Now the Lord talks about fasting. The fasting is not meant to be a miserable thing. Remember when Jesus said, when you fast, what are you supposed to do?
Don't look like that, don't draw your face, don't draw your attention to yourself.
Don't draw attention to yourself. Wash your face. Put on clean clothes. Put a smile on your face. How many times do we see this during Lent, in which people say, oh, I wish I could have that pie, but I gave up sweets for Lent. Or, oh my, that looks very good, but whoa, I gave that up for. No, don't tell people. Keep it to yourself. Wash your face. Clean your clothes. Because it says here, the word of the Lord came to me, and this is what the Lord says, the fasts of the 4th, 5th, 7th, 10th month will become joyful, glad occasions, happy festivals. Therefore, love, truth, and peace. The very end, this is what the Lord Almighty says, in those days 10 people from all languages and nations will take firm hold of one Jew by the hem of the robe and say, let us go with you because we have heard that God is with you. This is going to be so amazing that each person is going to draw 10 to themselves. Wouldn't that be great? Christ Lutheran goes out with his 3,000, semi-Christians. And life looks so much better, happier, content, successful, prosperous for those 3,000 that they each bring 10. Each bring 10. Because they say, what you have, we want. That would be great. Now, the curses begin with all the nations. 459, we won't go through all of these. It's against Hadrach, Damascus, Tyre, Ashkelon. Go down about halfway through. First of all, it says, never again will an oppressor overrun my people, for now I am keeping watch. If you ever want to ask the question, has every prophecy come true in Scripture? Never again will an oppressor overrun my people, for now I am keeping watch. Well, in 300 BC, Greece came. In 63, Rome came. They've had a couple of oppressors over the time. I'm not sure what to do with that. But you've heard this next section. Let me read this. Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly, riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. I will take away the chariots from Ephraim and the war house of Jerusalem. The battle bow will be broken. He will proclaim peace. Now, where have you heard that?
In the New Testament.
Palm Sunday, right?
Palm Sunday.
Yep. This is directly in all the Gospels, talking about Jesus telling his disciples to go get that colt and that foal and to be able to ride it in. And of course, the imagery behind here is that God now has protected Jerusalem to such an extent that this king can ride about not on a mighty white Arabian steed filled with armor, but there is so much peace that he can come in on a baby horse, a baby donkey. It's almost comical to imagine. You got that little donkey and the feet are dragging on either side. But the symbolism is strong, that this king is what? Righteous. This king is victorious. He has brought forth peace, and he is humble. That is, he's lowly. And this fits right into Jesus coming into Jerusalem there. Now, do you notice the literary differences between 459 and 460? I mean, it looks like a completely different style of writing. And this happens sometimes. Like it happened in Isaiah. We talked about that. Is there a first, second, and perhaps a third Isaiah? And then, so, academics like to wrestle with this, saying, is this the same prophet, but now he is writing in a different genre? It's like John Grisham writing that one novel, A Painted House, that has nothing to do with a lawyer taking on big business or a murder thing. It's not a legal eagle. Could be. I mean, people can write in a variety of genres. Is it Zechariah getting older? And now he's got just a different view. Or is it the school of Zechariah? Maybe he has his own disciples, and they're kind of picking it up after he dies. Or is it a completely different, anonymous author? And most scholars here lean towards the last one, that this is a completely different author. Let me show you how. Look at page 461. I will bend Judah as I bend the bow, and fill it with Ephraim. I will rouse your sons, Zion, against your sons, Greece, and make you like a warrior's sword. Then the Lord will appear over them. His arrow will flash like lightning. When's the last time you heard about Greece? We haven't. We haven't. Greece really doesn't get on the map. I mean, certainly there's people living in Greece, but Greece really doesn't get on the map as any kind of identifiable foe until Alexander the Great. And he dies at an early age, like in the early 30s, in the year 323 or 333 BC. That's when, and after his death then, he doesn't, well, I'm sure he's got plenty of kids, but he doesn't have an heir, so to speak. And so they divide his kingdom between generals. The Ptolemies go to, I think, Greece. The Seleucids go to the Middle East here. Another one too. What's the other one? Anyway, what happens then is that after Alexander the Great dies, and now the Seleucids are overseeing Judah, this whole Greek culture comes in. What Alexander did well from the Hellenistic standpoint is that he not only comes in and conquers, but he changes the entire culture. So by the time of about 250 BC, as we heard from our professor before, 250 BC, Hebrew is a dead language. And now they have to translate the Old Testament from Hebrew into Greek. It's called the Septuagint, because it derives from the word 70. The idea took 70 scholars, 70 days to do a translation, and they were all perfectly the same. In fact, according to tradition, each one brought their renditions in, and they counted the first word and the last word, the second to last word, and they all came down to the very same word in the middle of all 70 documents. But that just showed it was from God. So Greece takes over this, and then pretty soon this whole area now has lost its Jewishness. And in 167 BC, and this might be what it's talking about here, talking about Greece coming in, and then in 167 BC, Antiochus Epiphanes, he is the most recent ruler of this area. He outlaws Judaism. He bans circumcision. He puts an idol in the temple. And he severely persecutes anyone who's practicing Judaism. Until Judas of Maccabees comes up. And Judas of Maccabees takes through guerrilla warfare, comes in and rids the Holy Land of Antiochus Epiphanes and his army, and reestablish. And here's where, we've talked about this before, this is where Hanukkah comes in, because they go back in, they dedicate the temple, and they only have oil enough for one day. They have to go run and get some oil, but by the time they come back, the lamp is still burning. How many days? How long is Hanukkah? Is it 8 days?
Eight.
Yeah, 8 days. So the oil burns 8 days. So that's the miracle of Hanukkah with the lights. Now, of course, Hanukkah is a minor festival in Judaism until Christmas came around, and they kind of bumped up, it elevated it just a little bit more. But this seems to be much later than the 520 BC that we originally had Haggai and Zechariah pinned at. All right, jump over to page 463. The imagery of the shepherd is prevalent through the Old Testament. Probably because it's such a prevalent job, occupation back then. I mean, everybody's got some sort of connection to sheep. So this one talks about, God being the good shepherd, but let's read on. This is what the Lord my God says: shepherd the flock marked for slaughter. Their buyers slaughter them and go unpunished. Those who sell them say, praise the Lord, I'm rich. Their own shepherds do not spare them, for I will no longer have pity on the people of the land, declares the Lord. I will give everyone into the hands of their neighbors and their kings. They will devastate the land. I will not rescue anyone from their hands. You see, another reason they think is a different author is because he just got done talking about Zerubbabel is going to get it together. We're going to have a foundation, the seeds and the plants, and everything's going to be, and 10 people will follow one Jew because they know the Lord is with them. And suddenly there's this switch again. Let's read on. So I shepherd the flock marked for slaughter, particularly the oppressed of the flock. Then I took 2 staffs, one called favor, the other called union. Shepherd the flock. 1 month I got rid of 3 shepherds. And the flock detested me. Think about Jesus being called the good shepherd. I came to my own, John 1 says, I came to my own, and my own received me not. This is the rejection of the good shepherd. I grew weary of them and said, I will not be your shepherd. Let the dying die, the perish perish. that those who are left eat one another's flesh. Good luck. I took my staff called favor, broke it. Go down one verse here, one paragraph. I told them, if you think it best, give me my pay, but if not, keep it. So they paid me, oops, 30 pieces of silver. The Lord said, throw it to the potter. What? Now, it doesn't say anything about the potter's field. That's pretty close. Handsome price of thing. Okay, no. Now, so what's the actual verse here? It's like Zechariah 11 something, in which they say the 30 pieces of silver.
11:12.
Thank you. Now I'm going to pull up Matthew 30 pieces of silver. What's it like in 27, 29, something like that? Matthew 27. All right, so let me pull up Bible Gateway, Matthew 27:9. Here it comes. Let me share with you so you know what I'm doing here. Share screen. All right, can you see it yet? Yes, no?
Not yet. Oh, here it is.
Okay. So, isn't Zechariah what? 11 what? 11:12? All right, now we're in Matthew's Gospel. 27. Let's start here, 8. That is why the field is called the field of blood. This fulfilled the prophecy of
It's Jeremiah.
Jeremiah. This fulfilled the prophecy of Jeremiah that says they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of which he was valued by the people of Israel, and purchased the potter's field as the Lord directed it. All right, let's do a Google search and ask. I'm going to stop sharing.
It says Jeremiah 32:6-9. I'm looking at cross-references, my
All right.
cross-reference.
All right, so David looked up Jeremiah text. What does it say?
32:6-9 say, Jeremiah said, the word of the Lord came to me, Hanamel, son of Shallum, your uncle, is going to come to you and say, buy my field at Anathoth, because as nearest relative, it is your right and duty to buy it. Then just as the Lord had said, my cousin Hanamel came to me in the courtyard of the garden and said, buy my field at Anathoth in the territory of Benjamin, since it is your right to redeem it and buy and possess it. Buy it for yourself. I knew that this was the word of the Lord, so I bought the field.
For how much?
At Anathoth from my cousin, and weighed out for him 17 shekels of silver.
Oh!
17. Hey, it's inflation, different time, different value of money.
All right, so what's going on here? Did Matthew get it wrong? What's going on here? I mean, don't think I got the answer, because I don't have the answer. So we've got the field from Jeremiah.
Yeah,
He's got the number from Zechariah. I mean, could we ascribe some humanity to Matthew as he was writing this by memory?
Well,
And he was thinking, somewhere in the Bible it says.
or is he also saying, though, that Jeremiah actually was the original owner of that field? I mean, way back in when, when he told him, you know, we said,
Yeah.
Jeremiah bought it as a sign that, you know, the Lord was going to come through in the end. And now, is this the very same field that Jeremiah owned? It was the potter's field that
Yeah.
was part of the New Testament story.
So what language was Matthew reading the Old Testament in? Was it Greek? And would they have different translations? I mean, different
Yeah.
synonyms for different things that.
Yeah, each of the New Testament authors would have been reading it. They would have been reading the Septuagint. All right, where is the, Palm Sunday? Here it is. Look at chapter 21. Let me share this. Now this is Matthew, again, with the entrance into Jerusalem, in which they quote Zechariah. Every other gospel, the other three, say they took a colt and they put garments on it. But look how Matthew says it here. And he says, as Jesus and the disciples approached Jerusalem, they came to the town of Bethphage at the Mount of Olives. Jesus sent two and said, go to the village. As soon as you see it, there's a donkey tied there with its colt beside it. That's two animals, right?
Mhm.
Untie them and bring them to me. But you're going to ask you, that the Lord has need of it. And then this took place to, the quotes, look, your king is coming, humble, riding on a donkey, riding a colt. Verse 6, the two disciples did as Jesus commanded them. They brought the donkey and the colt to him and threw their garments over the colt, and he sat on it. What does C stay in the bottom here? Because I think they got this wrong.
Well, there's one reference to Isaiah 62:11 as well as Zechariah 9:9.
Yeah. All right, so my bad here. I've got a bad translation. This is the NLT, which is a paraphrase. I've got to give you the NIV.
Yeah, I was reading on NIV.
All right, so the NIV here, it says here, they brought the donkey and the colt and placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on them. So the idea is that Matthew is a literalist. That is, he's suggesting that Jesus rode two donkeys, or a donkey and a colt, into this processional there. So for him to get it wrong, that it was at 30 or 17 shekels, pieces of silver, it's interesting how those probably two traditions came together there. And they were merging it one to another. Stop sharing. All right, let's go on. All right, anything else here towards the end? Strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. I refer on page 465. Awake, sword, against my shepherd, against the man who is close to me, declares the Lord. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered, and I will turn my hand against the little ones. Again, another messianic prophecy with that too. All right. Anything else with Hezekiah before we just jump in a little bit, wade into Joel. Joel begins with all these locusts. Now, is there anybody here who grew up in a farming community in which the locusts came and just devoured everything? You know, you hear about, it's almost like the cicadas that I think they come in a cyclical pattern, and these locusts come and can absolutely wipe out anything. And there seems to be different kinds of locusts. He talks about when this locust is done eating, the next one comes and eats the rest, and the next one comes and eats the rest. I think I've seen a movie, where the locusts swarm, the cloud of locusts come in, and after they land in a field, it is complete. And you actually physically hear them gnawing away at all the plants. Anybody have any experience with locusts? How about, let me do another one. How about a close-up of a locust? Locust. All right, images. All right, I'll do a little share screen here. All right. So locusts are ugly buggers. I mean, they've got, so when Joel talks about locusts, he talks about like a lion. And that head of the locust, almost with that long snout right there, almost can look like a lion there. And then they've got the swarms going on. Man, they're just devastating, aren't they? Look at the size of them. They've got people holding them, they're like this big. Are locusts just big grasshoppers? Or is it a form of grass? It must be a form of grass.
That's because of the grass. Yeah, I've seen
Oh
Texas
man,
giant grasshopper.
this will give you nightmares at night here. Yeah. So let's read the very beginning of Joel. The word of the Lord came to Joel, son of Pethiel. Hear this, you elders. Listen, all who live in the land. Has anything like this ever happened in your days or the days of your ancestors? Tell it to your children. Let your children tell it to their children to the next generation. I bet if you lived in a farming community and that story of the locust coming in 1933, right after the dust storm, that story would have been told over and over and over again. What the locust swarm has left, the great locusts have eaten. What the great locusts have left, the young locusts have eaten. What the young locusts have left, the other locusts have eaten. Wake up, you drunkards, and weep. Wail, all you drinkers of wine. Wail because of the new wine. So then he likens this, makes this connection that this is the Lord of armies bringing in his people, bringing in the destruction. It's like, as we go through the prophets, don't you see kind of a similar theme running throughout the whole thing? God's punishment, people learning their lesson for a little bit. I'm going to build a little bit of the temple, and then they fall away again. All right, we're going to save Joel for next week. Anybody else have anything else to share? Any questions about life? Or the newest edict by Governor Cooper? I guess now we've gone from 25 to 10 indoors, down to 50 outdoors. Schools now, it's going to go back to home.
Yeah.
And 10 o'clock curfew.
10 o'clock curfew.
Except you can go buy food, and you can go buy pharmaceuticals, and you can go buy fuel for your car, but you probably can't go to a restaurant. Wouldn't be essential food you need.
Yeah.
But as my cousin says, now everybody has to be drunk by night.
That's right.
Last call, 9 o'clock.
Last call, 9 o'clock. I was listening to a podcast that was on something completely, it's on church stuff, but they were talking about COVID in Australia. They had severe measures. You were quarantined to your house. And really, you couldn't leave your city. And if you were out of your house, you had to have a really strong reason why you're out of your house. And we were talking about, you know, walking around the neighborhood and such. Now, Americans with our stubborn independence may never go along with it, but he said on the, after about a month or two of that, they're at 0-0.
Really?
0 cases, 0 deaths, 0 hospitalization.
Wow.
Well, due to their economy.
Yeah, 0 economy.
Well, but if it's back up and that's amazing.
Seems to me like it would pick up faster.
Wow.
A couple of months, we're going on what, 9 months?
Yeah.
9 months. So anyways, we'll see if these new measures kind of help out a little bit. Hey, I've got the next class. This is for all of you. Next class. And I want you to bring 10 non-believers with you.
Good luck with that.
Well, let's see, and there's that one over there.
10 non-believers, all
I
right?
can't bring
They're
in
in person.
there.
But they gotta register.
So here's the class that Drew and I are going to teach in January. It's called Post-COVID Church. What does it look like? So I'd like, since nobody knows the answer to that question, I would like all of us, I'll have some assigned readings, we'll have some discussions. I want us to dream together, study scriptures, read some reports, and figure out what this post-COVID church looks like. You know, I made mention of it that our new member class is beginning with non-geographical members. I think we're going to see that this is going to be a both-and church, in person and online. When it comes to worship or classes or things like this, meetings, but we have to figure out what else that means. And we have to figure out what the metrics are. How do you measure a healthy church? So anyway, I don't know the answer. So I went 6 weeks, just during Epiphany, before Lent. We're going to sit together and figure this out together. Everybody in?
What's the time? Is that a Wednesday?
Same thing, Wednesdays together. 10 friends.
Where's my check mark?
Check. Is that a check?
Check.
Good deal. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.